Parmesan cheese contains more glutamate per serving than any dish at a typical Chinese restaurant. Nobody has ever been afraid of Parmesan. But the three letters MSG on a food label trigger a fear response strong enough to reshape an entire industry's packaging. I spent weeks looking at 8 products that promise no MSG on the front of their packaging. And what I found printed on the back of each one changes what those 3 letters actually mean. The most feared snack in America for MSG content is actually the most honest product on your entire shopping list. Doritos nacho cheese made by Frito-Lay under PepsiCo lists monosodium glutamate right there on the ingredients in plain English with no asterisk and no euphemism to soften the blow. So why is Doritos ahead of every other product in this video? Because it's the only one that tells you exactly what you're eating. I looked into why Doritos are so hard to put down, and the answer is simpler than I expected. The glutamate in that cheese powder binds to umami receptors on your tongue and sends a signal to your brain that this food is packed with protein, even though a serving of Doritos has almost none. That's why it's so hard to stop reaching into the bag, because the umami hit tricks your brain into thinking there's more nutritional value than there actually is. MSG does the same job that naturally occurring glutamate performs in Parmesan or soy sauce, just in concentrated crystalline form. Here's the simplest baseline for everything that follows. If an ingredient list says monosodium glutamate in those exact words, that's the clearest label you will ever get. The irony is that the product most people fear is the only one in this entire video that doesn't play games with the name. Doritos are still ultra-processed chips, and the real health concerns are sodium-saturated fat and caloric density rather than the MSG itself. But for honest labeling, Doritos do what every healthier product in this video refuses to do. The next product charges you more for a promise that falls apart the moment you read 2 words on the back of the bottle. Have you ever actually looked at the ingredient list on your ranch dressing past the front label? And into the fine print, Hidden Valley Original Ranch is the best-selling salad dressing in America, owned by the Clorox Company. The label says no MSG added, and millions of Americans poured on everything from salads to pizza without a second thought. Flip the bottle and monosodium glutamate is nowhere on the ingredients, so it looks clean at first glance. But when I started reading more carefully, 2 words tucked between the oils and the buttermilk stopped me: natural flavor. Here's why that matters. Natural flavor is a legal catch-all that can contain dozens of compounds without specifying a single one. The FDA does not require manufacturers to disclose what's inside a natural flavor blend, which means free glutamic acid derived from a natural source can ride inside that term, and the label never needs to say so. This is the broadest loophole in American food labeling, and it was designed to work exactly this way. A product can claim no MSG added while containing natural flavor that includes free glutamate because the glutamate wasn't added as a standalone ingredient. It arrived hidden inside something else. When natural flavor appears on a label and the product tastes notably savory, ask yourself what's actually in that blend. The label will never tell you, and neither will the manufacturer. That's the tell if the savory flavor can't be explained by the visible ingredients alone. Natural flavor is probably carrying the load. Hidden Valley Ranch tastes good and most people will never question natural flavor. But no MSG added makes a specific promise, and natural flavor is how the industry keeps that promise technically alive, while making it impossible to verify. The next product uses a specific ingredient the FDA explicitly recognizes as containing free glutamate, and then spent millions on TV ads claiming the opposite. In 2008, a soup company launched the most aggressive marketing attack the grocery aisle had ever seen, running TV ads that directly called out a competitor by name for using MSG. The campaign framed it as made with TLC versus made with MSG. Campbell's Select Harvest was supposed to be the clean alternative, so I pulled a can off the shelf and started reading the back. Monosodium glutamate appears nowhere on the label, which sounds like a win. But in multiple varieties, another term shows up: yeast extract. I wasn't expecting that. Campbell's own footnote quietly admitted that some Select Harvest soups contain yeast extract, described as a natural ingredient that contains a small amount of naturally occurring glutamic acid. Yeast extract is made by breaking down yeast cells, releasing free glutamic acid, the exact same compound that gives MSG its taste. The FDA is explicit on this point. Products containing yeast extract cannot claim no MSG because yeast extract contains free glutamate. So how did Campbell handle it? They wrote no MSG added with an asterisk, and that asterisk led to a footnote about naturally occurring glutamate. That tiny star is doing the heaviest lifting in food marketing. Here's a habit worth building. Anytime an asterisk appears after a health claim on a package, flip the package and find the footnote before anything else. If the footnote explains that the claim doesn't apply to naturally occurring versions of the ingredient, that claim is technically true and practically meaningless. Campbell's soup is still real food with chicken, vegetables, and broth, and the yeast extract provides genuine flavor. But building a marketing war around no MSG while using an ingredient the FDA says contains the same compound is brand positioning, not health communication. After Campbell's ran those ads attacking Progresso, Progresso responded by reformulating, but the solution they chose created a problem you can count right there on the label. When a major soup brand gets publicly shamed on national television for using MSG, you'd expect them to pull it from the recipe. Progresso did exactly that, announcing they do not add MSG to their soups. But what went in as the replacement tells you everything about how the industry thinks about these labels. I pulled a can of Progresso traditional chicken noodle off the shelf and found yeast extract and hydrolyzed soy protein. On the same label, two separate sources of free glutamic acid in one can of soup. That caught me off guard. Hydrolyzed soy protein is made by breaking down soy protein with acid or enzymes, a process that frees the glutamic acid from protein chains. Stack yeast extract on top of that, and together these two ingredients deliver the same umami flavor that a single dash of pure MSG would provide, routed through two natural channels instead of one. Progresso's own website acknowledges this. While some MSG occurs naturally in ingredients like tomato extract, yeast extract, or soy sauce, we do not add any additional MSG. The key word is additional. They don't add the molecule by name, but they add ingredients your body processes identically. Here's a test for any soup sauce or seasoning in your kitchen. Count the glutamate sources on the back yeast, extract hydrolyzed protein of any type. Autolyzed yeast soy protein, isolate sodium caseinate. If two or more appear in one product, the cumulative free glutamate may exceed what a single dash of MSG would provide. The number of aliases is the tell. Progresso makes decent soup, and the reformulation was a genuine effort to respond to what consumers asked for. But replacing one glutamate source with two under different names isn't reduction, it's renaming. And if mainstream processed food plays this game with chips dressing and canned soup, you'd assume the brands selling organic and natural products wouldn't need to. The next product made me rethink that assumption entirely. If you've been buying organic soup specifically to avoid MSG, this is the part you need to hear. Amy's Kitchen markets itself as the clean alternative organic vegetarian family-owned Made with Love. The cans carry the USDA organic seal, and if you're a health-conscious shopper, Amy's feels like the safe answer. I pulled multiple Amy's products off the shelf and checked every ingredient list, and honestly, this one surprised me the most. Organic yeast extract appears in many of them. Same compound as the non-organic yeast extract in Progresso. Same free glutamic acid, same umami function on the tongue. The word organic in front changes how the yeast was farmed, but it does nothing to change the chemistry of what happens when that yeast breaks down into free glutamate. Researchers call this the organic halo effect, a cognitive bias where the word organic makes consumers assume a product is healthier in every dimension, not just pesticide-free. Have you ever noticed how your brain relaxes the moment you see that USDA Seal A shopper avoiding MSG reads organic yeast extract and thinks natural safe different? But your tongue can't tell the difference between organic free glutamic acid and conventional because there is no chemical difference to detect. Here's a test that cuts right through the halo. Ignore every adjective in front of the ingredient and read the ingredient itself. Organic sugar is still sugar. Organic yeast extract still contains free glutamic acid. The adjective describes how it was grown, not what it does inside your body. Amy's makes genuinely better soup than most canned alternatives with real vegetables, organic sourcing, and no artificial preservatives. But organic yeast extract performs the exact same function as MSG, while the brand benefits from anti-MSG sentiment. That's not a health strategy, that's a positioning strategy. After 5 brands using 5 different names to hide the same compound, I started wondering if anyone in the American grocery market had the nerve to do the exact opposite. Here's what kept coming back to me during this research. Every product sits at a different price point, targets a different customer, and tells a different story on the front of the package. But they all arrived at the exact same solution: keep the compound, lose the name. The molecule didn't change once across 5 products. The fear didn't go away. The only thing that moved was 3 letters off the label. So, is there anyone on American grocery shelves who looked at that same fear and made the opposite choice? Not hiding glutamate, not renaming it, but actually printing MSG on the front of the package and daring you to pick it up. There's a seasoning blend where the first thing you notice isn't the ingredient list. It's the fact that nobody who buys it seems afraid of what's inside. After 5 products hiding glutamate under different names, I picked up a seasoning blend at Trader Joe's that listed every glutamate source and didn't apologize for any of them. Trader Joe's Umami Seasoning Blend contains porcini mushroom powder, dried soy sauce, and crushed dried seaweed among its ingredients, with no MSG, no asterisk, and no defensive language anywhere on the packaging. The label simply tells you what's inside, and every single ingredient is a natural source of free glutamate. The glutamate in this blend comes from the same Whole Foods Kikunae Ikeda was studying when he first identified umami as a distinct taste in 1908. The flavor enhancement works identically to MSG because the compound is the same molecule, but it arrives in a whole food matrix alongside dozens of other flavor compounds and minerals, adding complexity that isolated MSG can't replicate. Here's what a side-by-side test reveals. Trader Joe's Umami blend on scrambled eggs delivers a rounder, more layered savory note with mushroom earthiness underneath and soy depth on top. Pure MSG on the same eggs tastes sharper and more one-dimensional, like the difference between a chord and a single note on a piano. I didn't expect the gap to be that wide. The glutamate is identical. The delivery system creates 2 completely different eating experiences. The blend costs more per serving than pure MSG, and the mushroom and soy character come along for the ride whether you want them or not, which isn't always what a recipe needs. But Trader Joe's lets the ingredients speak without euphemism, without shame, and without a footnote explaining what the label really means. If you're someone who cooks with soy sauce, Parmesan, or mushrooms and never thinks twice about it, this blend puts all 3 of those umami sources into one jar and saves you the trouble. But after tasting it, one question kept nagging me. There's a product on the same grocery shelf that contains nothing but pure MSG, one single ingredient, and it's been sitting there since 1947, while every other brand in this video scrambled to hide the same compound. What does your food actually taste like when you add it? One product has been sitting on American grocery shelves for nearly 80 years, surviving every single wave of MSG panic, and most shoppers have walked right past it without noticing. Accent Flavor Enhancer lists exactly one ingredient: monosodium glutamate. One ingredient, no pretense, no asterisk, no apology. Just the compound that every other product on this list spent millions trying to hide, sitting quietly on a bottom shelf since 1947. Here's the comparison that puts the entire video into perspective. A block of aged Parmesan in the same grocery store contains roughly 1,200 milligrams of free glutamic acid per 100 grams, one of the highest natural concentrations of any food on Earth. Higher than soy sauce, higher than any Chinese restaurant dish ever tested in a laboratory. Those white crystals visible on a wedge of 24-month Parmesan that's free glutamate produced by the same enzymatic breakdown that creates MSG, just happening over years instead of hours. Nobody puts no MSG on a Parmesan label, and that's the reason Italian cooking tastes incredible without anyone ever adding a crystal of MSG to the recipe. The Parmesan, tomatoes, mushrooms, and cured meats are already doing the work. Classic Italian food is an umami delivery system built entirely from whole foods, and nobody is afraid of any of it. I set up a simple test with 2 identical bowls of steamed vegetables. One seasoned with a 1/4 teaspoon of salt alone, the other with half that salt plus a pinch of accent. The accent bowl wins every time, and the reason caught me off guard. The broccoli doesn't taste like MSG, it tastes more like broccoli, and the carrots come across sweeter and more vivid. Glutamate doesn't add a foreign flavor to your food. It turns up the volume on whatever flavor is already there. Accent also contains roughly a third of the sodium in table salt, which means swapping some salt for MSG can actually lower total sodium intake while making food taste better. For the small percentage of people who experience genuine sensitivity to concentrated free glutamate in any form, Accent is the highest concentration source on any shelf and worth approaching carefully. But this product has survived 8 decades by being quiet, tucked away, never advertising, never defending itself. The next brand looked at that quiet shelf and decided silence wasn't the answer anymore. For decades, the fear of MSG was inseparable from the fear of Asian food. Chinese restaurant syndrome wasn't bad science in a vacuum. It landed on top of cultural suspicion that shaped how Americans thought about Asian cooking for generations, and that suspicion never fully went away. What finally pushed back wasn't a study or a regulation. It was a generation of Asian American food founders who decided the hiding had gone on long enough, and that made me respect these brands before I even tasted the product. Omsum was founded by Vietnamese American sisters Kim and Vanessa Pham. Fly By Jing was founded by Jing Gao. These brands don't hide MSG. They print it on the front of the package in bold as a deliberate statement of cultural identity. When these brands put MSG on their labels proudly, they're not just selling seasoning. They're correcting a narrative that was never really about the molecule in the first place. I tasted Fly By Jing's Sichuan chili crisp next to a conventional no MSG chili oil, and the difference wasn't close. The Sichuan pepper hit first, not as heat, but as a buzzing numbness that spread across my lips. Then the chili built underneath slow and warm, a rising wave rather than a sharp spike. The fermented black beans arrived last, adding a depth that was almost meaty and almost sweet. Impossible to name, but impossible to forget. 10 seconds of flavor unfolding in sequence layer after layer. The conventional oil delivered heat and then vanished. And here's the thing that stayed with me after that: tasting the MSG and Fly By Jing isn't doing the work alone. It's working alongside tribute peppers, fermented black beans, and mushroom powder, creating umami from multiple directions at once. The complexity isn't from the glutamate. It's from everything around the glutamate. These brands are premium priced and not available in every grocery store. And MSG sensitivity remains real for a small subset of people, regardless of who reclaims the label. But from Doritos listing MSG, honestly at the bottom of this list of brands wearing it proudly at the top, the distance was never about chemistry. The products that hide glutamate charge you for the hiding. The products that embrace it charge you for the quality. The compound on your tongue is the same one Kukunai Ikeda found in seaweed soup in 1908, the same one your taste buds were built to recognize. 3 rules for the rest of every grocery trip. If the front says no MSG added, flip the package and look for yeast extract, hydrolyzed protein, or autolyzed yeast. If any of those appear on the back, the compound is still in your food, just under a different name. That asterisk after the health claim isn't protecting you, it's protecting the company that wrote the label. If a health claim needs a footnote to be true, it was never written for your benefit. If Parmesan doesn't scare you, the molecule was never your problem. You already eat glutamate every day in tomatoes, aged cheese, soy sauce, and mushrooms. The compound isn't new. The fear was never really about the science, and it was never really about your health. The most honest label has the fewest surprises on the back. Read the ingredients, not the promises. MSG was never the villain in this story. The label was the problem all along. Check the soup in your pantry tonight and flip it over. How many glutamate sources are hiding on that ingredient list? If you want to keep understanding what's actually inside the food on your shelves with the same depth and the same honesty in every video, subscribe. Next time a label says no MSG added, the question isn't what was added. The question is what was renamed, and now you know how to find it.